So to start, although it seems like a lifetime ago for those of us on the phone and the frontline workers in India, it was really only about 2 weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago, that the news started coming out of India. And luckily, Pratham has a team that spans India, both rural and urban areas. And so we were able to quickly get real-time news and real-time data and facts, as Pratham always does. And unfortunately, the situation was just as dire and tragic as the media made it out to be. So with this data and news from real-time frontline workers at Pratham, we were able to quickly put together a task force here in the US of a lot of our board members and national people across the nation to figure out how best to serve this problem in India. And based on initial discussions with medical staff, it turned out oxygen was literally the #1 issue and the issue of the day. So our task force just quickly figured out how could Pratham use its resources best to procure and distribute oxygen within India. And just to spend a minute, there's really two sources of oxygen. You can either build a plant and allow people to bring cylinders and fill up the cylinders and take it to hospitals, or you can provide oxygen concentrators. And I think both work well. The unfortunate thing with the oxygen plants is, one, they're expensive. Number two, they take a lot longer to set up. And number three, the hospital infrastructure at the smaller and rural hospitals aren't necessarily set up for oxygen plants. So we quickly moved our focus to oxygen concentrators. The great thing about these oxygen concentrators is they're mobile. They require a lot less infrastructure. They can be used in hospitals, at home, and even mobile settings. I'm sure you're hearing news of patients being served in automobiles, and oxygen concentrators can work there too. The only real infrastructure required is electricity for them to work. So once we started getting into this, it turns out China actually produces about 90% of the world's oxygen concentrators. So in a matter of about 24 hours, we put a procurement team together with people on the ground in China to help us out with this. So we worked on specifications, and we had consultations with numerous medical staff and teams to find out what is the right specification to go after. And it turns out 5-liter or 10-liter, depending on certain things, both work. So we started procuring both of those. We made sure that all of them are hospital grade. We looked at ratios of oxygen concentration at different delivery levels for the different type of devices. They had to be 220 volts. And then, something as simple as the manual and the dashboard on the device had to be in English. It couldn't be in Chinese and things like that. So we had to make sure all these check marks were available on the device. We did face a bunch of obstacles initially. Number one was factory quality. All of the concentrators purchased by Pratham had to be European or US certified factories. So we went into and quickly had audits done of the factories to make sure the certification met up with US and European standards. Unfortunately, I'm sure you're hearing a lot of reports of fraud and low quality products have surfaced, but luckily we were able to sort through that through our audit process. Finances were an issue. Virtually all of the factories were looking for large advances, or even 100% in most cases, for the orders. So we needed to have people directly on the ground in China to confirm we're giving advances of $200 to $500 to $1 million to people we felt secured with. Chinese customs became an issue. There is a lot of bureaucracy in China to ship products out of China. So we figured out a system to move them to Hong Kong, which reduces that bureaucratic burden. But within Hong Kong, you have to have a warehouse to store these until an air freight option would be available. And then finally, we had to put together a lot of the paperwork needed. Our procurement team honestly worked day and night with numerous factories. And even I think Rajiv Sokti is on the line, and we worked with numerous factions of the Indian government next to see what we could do once we've procured the actual concentrators. So in conjunction with Rajiv and his work with the Indian government, we were able to get discounted air freight and charter options. And just remember, during this time, China banned flights from India directly into China. So our options significantly reduced. So it turned out it was all freight or charter options only. Our team was able to get customs duties waived for imported concentrators. And then we were even able to get GST waived. In fact, the Pratham concentrators were the first imported relief products that had the GST waived, both for just normal shipments of it, as well as interstate sales of the products. We were able to get those waived, which was a large savings and allowed us to procure even more product. So now we've brought the product from China to India. The next question is, what do you do next? Nishant will speak more about a lot of the dashboards we've put together for transparency and reporting of how the concentrators get distributed. And then the Pratham team, because we work in so many communities across India, rural and urban, we were able to easily find out where the need actually is. In fact, with our first set or not just our first set, with every set, we also have put together how-to videos of how to use the concentrator. And luckily we have our digital initiative out there with the tablets, so we can easily process the how-to videos through our digital initiatives, which helps the communities that these ultimately end up in. So ultimately, in less than a 2-week period, in conjunction with a couple of other charitable organizations that we work closely with, Pratham and these couple of other organizations, we've been able to procure about 13,000 concentrators. And just to put that into perspective, the US government originally sent over less than 10,000 concentrators. So Pratham and our partners have been able to actually far exceed what the US government was able to do. And also, to put numbers to it, we believe each concentrator can affect about or help about 10 patients per month. So if you work through those numbers, once we have the 13,000 delivered, Pratham will be affecting the lives of about 130,000 patients every 30 days that this pandemic continues. And that's just an amazing number that we've been able to put together. There's not too many times that in a matter of 2 weeks, you can save 130,000 lives a month. And the team on this phone call was able to do that. So finally, I'll also talk about, now that the first 2 weeks have ended, we've started facing new challenges as it relates to the procurement. First is capitalism in its rawest form. So traders from India, as well as Chinese entrepreneurship at its best, in a matter of 10 days, the pricing of concentrators has shot up 2 to 3x from their normal pricing. So that's something we've navigated our best through, but it remains an obstacle. The other thing is decisions have to be made within minutes, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you think about it for a second, we're all working on different time zones and at different times. So what will happen is a factory will call and say, I can give you 500 at this price, will you take it? And you have about less than 5 minutes to decide and wire the money. And that could be happening at 1 a.m., whether it's California or East Coast time. And the decision has to be made and funds have to be set up to go. So that's another obstacle we've worked through. The Chinese government is also lately threatening controlling all of the production and distribution of concentrators within China. There was a Times of India report on that. The Indian government is asking China to stop the gouging of prices. So we'll see how that goes. And now that we've procured it, we're finding out promise dates for a lot of other organizations have changed. So components and raw material shortages are happening in China. So what they may have promised to deliver late May is suddenly June 10th, and then it becomes June 20th. and keeps getting pushed. So our team keeps navigating through that. So ultimately, I think everyone on the phone should, feel comfortable that our team in China and India and the US is working around the clock to put the best execution plan together.